Ocean spray lashes the deck. The carrier heaves. Flight crew crouch into the wind. This is not a nimble fighter waiting to leap. It's a squat, land-based B-25 Mitchell, a medium bomber, parked where it was never meant to be. The wooden flight deck of USS Hornet on the gray morning of April 18, 1942. Engines cough, then settle into a steady roar. There is no catapult. The runway is a short plank over a moving ocean. Ahead, only a white wall of spray and the bow. In the left seat sits James Harold Doolittle, test pilot, engineer, racer. Calm voice, fast hands. He runs the checklist like a ritual he respects. Fuel, topped, trim, heavy nose, flaps, enough lift, not enough drag to kill it. Bomb load, light but real. This is not a stunt. This is payback after Pearl Harbor. A yellow shirt snaps the signal, chocks out, throttles forward. The bomber inches, then commits. Tires hunt for grip on wet boards as Hornet turns hard into the wind to gift the wings a few extra knots. The ship rises on a swell, stealing distance. It drops, giving a breath of air. The pilot holds center line. No panic. Eyes bounce between airspeed and horizon. Too slow to fly. Too fast to stop. A bomber doesn't leap. It convinces itself to fly. The bow rushes closer. Spray hits like gravel. For a heartbeat, the deck looks shorter than the airplane. Then the wheels go light. The deck falls away. The Mitchell hangs, shudders, and climbs. Not much. Not safe. But enough. One down. 15 to go. From the bridge, the view is inspiring and terrifying. Each bomber takes the same storm in a different way. Some crab left, some right. Each carrying the same extra fuel that makes the takeoff obscene. The air is a mix of rain, exhaust, and nerves. The flight deck becomes a metronome of courage. Signal, throttle, motion, lift. Again, again, again. By the end, 16 Army bombers will be airborne from a carrier deck. A sentence that wasn't supposed to exist now belongs to history. This was not the plan. The strike force was meant to creep closer, to wait for a cleaner patch of sky, to launch at roughly 450 nautical miles so the crews could reach airfields in China by nightfall. But the ocean has a vote, and the enemy has radios. At dawn, a Japanese picket boat, the Nittō Maru, spotted the task force and got a warning out. The Americans had to launch early, at about 650 nautical miles from Japan. Every extra mile over water eats fuel. That cushion for China? Gone. The new plan is simple and brutal. Bomb. Then fly until the tanks run dry. Then bail out into darkness, or try to crash land wherever there is ground. None of that changes the job. Over the horizon, USS Enterprise paces alongside Hornet. Her fighters stowed below because the deck is jammed with bombers. Together, they are Task Force 16 under Admiral William Halsey. The Navy brought the platform. The Army brought the reach. The crews brought the nerve. They trained for this at Eglin Field, Florida. Short-run takeoffs painted on concrete, fuel-lean climbs, the strange ballet of heavy airplanes pretending the ground moved under them. Now the ground truly moves. Now the pretending is over. Another Mitchell grinds down the deck. The pilot times his roll to the carrier's rhythm, letting a lifting swell add a heartbeat of free air beneath the wings. Wheels kiss spray, then clear it. Gear up. Hold the nose just above a stall, nursing every knot. Mixture lean. Temperature steady. Don't chase the instruments. Trust the training. In the right seat, clipped calls. Airspeed good. Power set. Temps green. In the nose, a navigator bends over a chart with a pencil stub already white with salt. On deck, the choreography never stops. Signal, clear. Duck, repeat. Glances follow each departing bomber into the mist, then snap back to the next job, because the future depends on the speed of their hands, because it does. The last B-25 claws free, drags its wheels through a curtain of spray, and climbs into the same gray that swallowed the first. 16 silver fuselages step down toward the horizon in a ragged line, each one a small moving fact inside a plan that still sounds like a rumor. Behind them, Hornet steadies. Beside them, Enterprise holds guard. Ahead, the Pacific is bigger than anyone remembers. Between ship and shore lies a strip of air barely wide enough for hope. No speeches, no band. Only rain, applauding aluminum, and wind drumming on wings. 16 bombers. 650 nautical miles out. Hornet and Enterprise together. A picket boat forced the launch. What was impossible 5 minutes ago is now on its way to Tokyo. America is still reeling from Pearl Harbor. The Philippines are collapsing. The map keeps turning red. And the word most Americans hear in the spring of 1942 is retreat. Morale is a resource too, and it's running low. In the White House, Franklin D. Roosevelt asks a simple, impossible question. Can we hit Tokyo soon? The honest answer from the services is no, for two different reasons. The Army Air Forces can't reach the Japanese homeland from any friendly base. The Navy doesn't fly medium bombers. Two truths collide. Out of that collision comes a third: cooperation. Enter Lieutenant Cole James Harold Doolittle, test pilot, engineer, racer. He isn't the highest rank in the room, but he's the one who hears the shape of a solution. The Navy has carriers that can bring an airfield to the enemy's door. The Army has B-25 Mitchells with the legs to cross ocean once they're airborne. If those bombers can take off from a carrier, they can bomb Japan and then run for prearranged fields in China. They will not be able to land back on the ship. That isn't a flaw, it is the plan. The objective is crystal: psychological shock and strategic distraction. A few dozen bombs won't break an industrial city, but the raid can break a myth that the home islands are beyond reach. If Tokyo can be touched, Japan must drag fighters and guns inward, audit defenses, shuffle priorities. Every flinch in the enemy's planning buys time for America to mobilize. Numbers start to rule the idea. Launch distance, planned at roughly 450 nautical miles so the crews can reach China after the strike. Emergency distance, if discovered by picket boats, launch from about 650 nm. Fuel cushion becomes a question. Deck length, a B-25 needs almost a city block of runway on land. On a carrier, the runway is a short plank that rises and falls. Weight, bomb load, fuel, and crew gear must be shaved to the gram, then flown with discipline so tight that China versus Black Ocean can hinge on a single decision. Doolittle's team writes a plan that reads like a dare. 16 B-25B airframes will be modified for range. More fuel, less gun weight, cleaner undersides. Crews will practice short-run launches and fuel-lean climbs. Training runs January-March at Eglin Field, Florida. Painted lines to mimic a carrier deck. Hand signals that say more than paragraphs. The habit of moving a heavy airplane as if the ground itself were in motion. The task force architecture is equally blunt. Sail from NAS Alameda, April 2, 1942, with 16 B-25B lashed to USS Hornet's flight deck, their noses jutting over the bow like questions waiting for answers. At sea, rendezvous with USS Enterprise for fighter cover. Together they form Task Force 16 under Admiral William Halsey. Approach under radio silence. When within planned distance, turn into the wind and launch all 16 in sequence. Cross the coast low, fast, and alone. Primary aim points: Tokyo, Yokosuka, Nagoya, Kobe, dockyards, refineries, aircraft works. Then bend south and west and keep flying until China lifts out of the dark. Every paragraph has a what if welded into it. What if the outer picket line spots the force? Then choose. Launch early from the 659 meters, or turn back and throw away the one opportunity the country has begged for since December. What if the weather closes? The short deck gets shorter. A wing stalls at the same speed no matter what you hope. What if the fields in China are socked in by fog? Then jump. What if they miss the coast? Then ditch. No illusions. Only math, training, and nerve. Momentum builds because the logic is clean. A small force can impose a huge effect if it hits the enemy's mind, not just his factories. The Navy wants the enemy to look inward. The Army Air Forces want to prove reach. The American public needs proof of will. Each gets something it needs. And Doolittle, calm in briefings, ruthless in details, stitches the pieces together, worrying over a filler cap with the same focus he gives a map. There is also a quieter reason, spoken in mess halls and workshops. The families back home. The mothers and fathers who watched Oahu burn on a newsreel. Wives who have letters with no replies. Young men in flight jackets who have trained for years and haven't struck a blow. A raid on Tokyo won't bring anyone back, but it will change the taste of the air, from ashes to iron. By the time Hornet clears San Francisco Bay with those 16 Mitchells on April 2nd, the die is cast. Out on the Pacific, Enterprise slides into station, cruisers and destroyers take their places, and Task Force 16 becomes more than a headline. It becomes a moving runway with a clock for a heartbeat. There is Plan A, launch at 400-450 nanometers, and Plan B, launch early if discovered. Both end the same way, over Tokyo. The difference is how much night is left when China appears under the nose. That is why America risks the raid. Not because it is safe, because it is necessary. To claw back initiative, burn a hole in the myth of invulnerability, and prove that attack is not a one-way street. The men who will fly it know the odds. They also know the sentence this mission wants to write in the enemy's sky. You are not beyond our reach. The question wasn't who would fly. It was what could physically fly off a carrier and still have the legs to cross an ocean. The B-17 had range, but demanded a runway the sea could never give. The B-24 needed even more. The A-20 was quick, but its endurance fell short. The B-26 was fast and infamous for long, unforgiving takeoffs. A carrier deck does not negotiate. The B-25 Mitchell kept surviving the shortlist. Medium size, honest handling, a wing that made lift without cruel speeds, and once airborne, enough range to matter. It wasn't perfect. It was possible. Wingspan 67 FT7 in, tight, but workable on a busy deck. Possible had to become probable. Doolittle's team re-engineered the B-25 for one job. 1. Range first. Fuel was life. Modifications lifted capacity from a standard 646 US gal to 1,841 US gal, using extra cells in the bomb bay, crawlway, and the former lower turret space. Transfer drills became muscle memory. Every gallon bought minutes over black water. 2. Kill weight. Keep what keeps you alive. The retractable lower, ventral, turret came out. Non-essential radios and some armor plates were pulled. De-icers, anti-icers stayed. For weather, not comfort. Lighter isn't pretty. Lighter flies sooner. 3. A bomb sight you could afford to lose. No Norden on this mission. Too sensitive. Too heavy. Wrong altitude envelope. Captain C. Ross Greening designed a 20-cent metal sight, nicknamed the Mark Twain, that worked at low level and was cheap enough to toss. elegant where it mattered, expendable where it counted. 4. Teeth that weigh nothing. The B-25B had no tail guns. Crews painted broomsticks black and stuck them in the tail cone. In rain and turbulence, a fighter pilot only needs a doubt. Deception weighs 0. 5. Engine discipline over engine luck. Technique became fuel. Short-run launches. Gear up the instant the wheels cleared. Nose held just above stall. Leaned mixtures and careful prop pitch. Flying the numbers so tightly that China versus ocean could hinge on a wrist. Eglin's concrete had carrier deck lines painted on it so crews could rehearse the ballet until it felt inevitable. Navy Lieutenant Henry L. Miller drilled the Army pilots in timing their roll to the ship's rise and fall. 6. Deck choreography matters. A carrier offers a moving, wet, 467-foot runway, if you're first in line. With the ship charging into a Haas 50-knot wind over deck, 20 knots ship speed plus toss 30 knots wind. That's the difference between flying and swimming. Doolittle's own takeoff had about 467 feet to spare, and almost ate a wave before the Mitchell clawed into air. There were trade-offs, and the men signed for them in sweat. Fewer guns meant trusting speed, surprise, and altitude profile over firepower. More fuel meant living with gasoline in spaces usually meant for people. Simpler sights meant lower, quicker runs. The kind of flying that punishes hesitation and rewards discipline. Then came the test. No manual can grade. Does the airplane believe you? On Florida concrete at Eglin Field, a painted deck became the edge between physics and faith. If the Mitchell would leap there, it might at sea. By late March, the logbooks and the pilot's hands agreed. A stripped, tuned B-25B would go. Not easily, not safely, but enough. So the choice was made. Not because the B-25 was the fastest or the longest legged on paper, but because it could be coaxed to do the one thing the plan demanded: take off where no medium bomber had ever taken off, and keep flying far beyond comfort. 16 modified Mitchells rolled onto USS Hornet at NAS Alameda. Out at sea, USS Enterprise slid into station, and Task Force 16 took shape around them. The airplane was chosen. The airframe was ready. At Eglin Field, Florida, the Army Air Forces painted a carrier deck on concrete and told medium bomber crews to forget what they knew about runways. The lines were short. The sea was imagined. The habit had to become real. Shove a heavy airplane to flying speed in the length of a bad city block, then not yank it into a stall when the wheels let go. Navy Lieutenant Henry L. Miller walked the B-25 pilots like a boxing coach before a title fight. "Don't waste a foot," he'd say, tapping the chalked bow with his boot. "Time your roll to the swell. Even on concrete, you can feel rhythm. When the ship rises, it steals distance. When it drops, it gives you air. Use both." Crews practiced short-run launches until the sequence was music. Brakes set. Throttles forward. Boost up. Release. Hold the center line. Let the yoke get light. Then gear up as soon as you're an inch clear. Then nose low to build speed. Then a long, fuel-lean climb that feels wrong to nerves and perfect to numbers. The navigator learned to mark time and fuel like a metronome. The engineer learned a new superstition: a dry floor. Gasoline in the wrong place meant range in the wrong place. Gone. They flew heavy on purpose, around 31,000 pounds at takeoff in full raid trim, because the ocean would give them no favors later. They learned to love ugly numbers, prop pitch and mixture where performance meets economy, airspeed knife just above stall so the wing gives lift without demanding more fuel than the plan allows. Technique wasn't style here. Technique was range. The airplanes changed around them. Ground crews removed the ventral turret, stripped some armor, pulled non-essential radios. In their place came fuel, auxiliary cells in bomb bay and fuselage, lifting total capacity to roughly 1,141 US gallons. Hoses and valves webbed through spaces meant for men. Everyone memorized the transfer order. Everyone practiced the drill with gloves on and eyes closed. If a line failed in weather, hands had to know what brains couldn't see. Bombing practice rewired itself too. No Norden, no high-altitude mathematics. Captain C. Ross Greening showed them an improvised metal bomb sight, the 20-cent sight you could build on a workbench and teach in an afternoon. It was built for low, fast work. A quick look, a firm hand, a short exposure. Precision would come from proximity, not algebra. And because the B-25B had no tail stinger, crews made one you couldn't weigh. 2 broomsticks, painted flat black, stuck in the tail cone to look like twin 50s. In a storm of rain and exhaust, a hunting fighter only needs a doubt. The inter-service dance tightened. Sailors taught soldiers how a flight deck breathes. Soldiers taught sailors how a medium bomber thinks. Hand signals replaced paragraphs. A thumb up, a palm flat, a forearm chopping the air became a grammar of survival. On the ramp, a yellow shirt's posture meant more than a radio ever could. They rehearsed emergencies they hoped never to meet. Engine cough at 50 knots? Chop, brake, pray you stop before the chalked bow. Engine cough at liftoff? Commit, nose down, keep flying. Look for options that aren't there on concrete, but might be at sea. A gust, a drop, a miracle called enough. The flight surgeon talked them through fatigue and tunnel vision. The chaplain talked them through what families should and shouldn't hear. The men nodded. They were learning to carry silence as part of the load. By March, practice bled into muscle. Pilots could feel a 2-knot difference in overdeck wind, as if it were a hand on the shoulder. Navigators could call fuel remaining to the minute and be right. Crew chiefs ran their palms along fuel lines and fittings the way a safecracker listens to tumblers. Touch as an instrument. Then came the move. At NAS Alameda, California, 16 modified B-25B rolled toward the water and climbed an elevator they had no business using. They were lashed on top of USS Hornet in daylight, noses jutting over the bow like questions that dared the bay to answer them. Sailors watched, grinned, shook their heads, and kept tying knots. A medium bomber looked ridiculous on a carrier. 16 looked like a decision. On April 2nd, 1942, Hornet cleared the Golden Gate, her deck crowded with Army airplanes and her hangar stuffed with Navy fighters stowed below. Out past the coast, a gray shape slid into station, USS Enterprise, bringing the eyes, fangs, and radar the task force would need. The 2 carriers, their cruisers, destroyers, oilers, a moving city without streetlights, a floating secret called Task Force 16. At sea, the last pieces clicked. Crews practiced deck choreography with tie-downs and chocks as if they'd been raised to it. Navy handlers explained the invisible geometry of a launch. Line the first Mitchell at the aft edge. Keep 467 feet of usable deck for number 1. Start number 2, the instant number 1 lifts. Let the ship's 20-knot charge into a 30-knot gale gift, the wing a large 50-knot wind over deck. That's not trivia. That's takeoff speed you don't have to drink from a tank. Briefing sharpened to a single edge. Planned launch, 450 nautical miles off Japan. Enough fuel to reach China after the strike. Contingency, if the outer picket boats sight the task force, launch early from about 650 Nenenmi, except that reach a runway becomes reach the coastline. The words bail out and ditch lost their drama. They became navigation options. And still, there was room for the human. A navigator tucked a photo into a map case. A gunner trimmed a broomstick tail gun with a pocket knife until it looked less like a broomstick. A pilot oiled a door latch that stuck in the Florida humidity because a sticky latch is a minute you don't have over black water. They were turning superstition into procedure. One last drill on the open ocean. Spotting. Launch sequence. Rendezvous points after takeoff. The intercom test felt like a roll call of calm. Pilot. Co-pilot. Navigator. Engineer. Bombardier. Tail. Broomsticks ready. Laughter. Once. Then quiet. Night fell without lights. The task force slid west under a lid of weather. Radios low. Radars humming. Lookouts alert. In the morning, there would be more practice. More notes and margins. More small fixes to things that could not, must not fail. They had learned how to make a carrier their runway. Next, the Pacific would try to make the plan its problem. Dawn lifts like wet steel. Task Force 16 pushes west-northwest, bows knifing through a low, chilly swell. Radios stay quiet. Lookouts don't blink. The plan says launch at 450 nautical miles to leave fuel for China. The ocean says nothing. It just moves. On USS Hornet, 16 B-25B sit shoulder to shoulder, noses over the bow. To starboard, USS Enterprise keeps watch. Scouts out at first light. Fighters ready. Radar sets humming. Two carriers breathe in step. One heartbeat, one gamble. A wick of smoke on the horizon becomes a mast, then a hull. A picket boat slides out of the murk like a bad idea made of wood. Small, stubborn, exactly where it needs to be. On her deck, a radio. Between her and Tokyo, a straight line. The quiet breaks. Signal flags snap. Orders ride the wind. An escort opens fire. A dive bomber claws upward. The wooden hull splinters and rolls. But the thing that mattered already happened. Somewhere across the Pacific, a clerk types, enemy carriers sighted. On the flag bridge, the arithmetic is ugly and fast. If the enemy knows, the window closes by the hour. Submarines will nose into the approaches. Airfields will wake. The farther the task force steams, the tighter the noose becomes. Admiral William Halsey thinks in sea room and time. Captain Mark Mitcher thinks in decks and seconds. Lieutenant Cole James H. Doolittle thinks in gallons and miles to dark. 3 men, 1 answer. Launch now. Not at 450 meters, at roughly 650 nautical miles. The cushion becomes a question. Reach a runway turns into reach the coastline. Word knifes down ladders. In ready rooms, crews fold maps along new creases. Navigators recalc headings and ground speeds. Pencil stubs scratch fuel plans that used to end at airfields and now end at cliff lines. One note at the bottom grows heavier. Bail out over China if fields are socked in. Ditch only if there's no land to reach. On the flight deck, yellow shirts become a metronome. Chalks, signals, clearances. The choreography they drilled at Eglin Field in chalk and sweat is about to be written in spray and noise. Below, engine rooms answer bells. The task force digs for speed so the overdeck wind will be there when the first bomber rolls. 20 knots of ship, 30 knots of gale, 50 knots across the wings before the throttles even bite. See graphic. Numbers that mean lift, numbers that mean life. A calm voice cuts through intercom static. All crews, final check. Pilot, co-pilot, navigator, engineer, bombardier, tail, broomsticks ready. A ripple of laughter. Once. Then the sound gets serious again. Security teams move down the line of B-25s. Fuses safe, fuel caps tight, tie-downs rigged to snake away in one practiced pull. A crew chief thumps a panel and listens for the hollow that means a tank is full. Superstition masquerades as inspection. No one calls it out. Across the water, Enterprise's scouts report more shadows. Maybe more pickets, maybe fishermen, maybe worse. Halsey does not wait to find out. He's seen opportunities die of second thoughts. Final brief in one breath. You will be alone over target. Aim points are Tokyo, Yokosuka, Nagoya, Kobe, docks, refineries, aircraft works. After attack, head southwest. If you can't make fields, bail out over China before the tanks run dry. If captured, name, rank, serial. Good hunting. No hymn, no speeches. Just the line that matters. Launch. A yellow shirt swings his arm. The first Mitchell edges forward, props chewing rein. 467 feet of usable deck ahead. Beyond it, a hard gray nothing. Aero 820 ship's time, April 18, 1942. Doolittle glances once along the left wing, once at the instruments, once at the far end that isn't nearly far enough. A few aircraft back, Ted Lawson's ruptured duck inches toward its own chalk mark. One crew in a line of 16, each carrying a different way. The day can go wrong, and one way it must go right. The decision that began as smoke on the horizon arrives at a paint line on wet planks. The plan is lighter by 200 nautical miles and heavier by everything that can go wrong. But the mission hasn't changed. It never did. 16 medium bombers, 650 nautical miles from Japan. A picket line burned away too late to matter. 2 carriers daring physics to behave. The rest is sequence, signal, throttle, motion, lift. Tokyo is now exactly 1 courage away. Aero 820, April 18, 1942. Rain scrapes the deck. A yellow shirt swings his arm. Doolittle's B-25B surges, eats 467 feet of wet planks, and clears the bow into gray. One after another, the Mitchells go. No formation. Single ship launches under radio silence. The ship gives them chasseurs 50 knots of wind over deck. 20 knots ship, plus Komari 30 knots gale. See graphic. The last bomber lifts inside an hour. 16 up, none left behind. Out ahead, the Pacific is a flat muscle. Crews settle to the work. Fuel checks every 10 minutes, mixture lean, props set, power conservative. Altitude low, under 500 feet, to hide in sea clutter and stay beneath radar lobe. Windows bead with salt. Wipers tick in a slow metronome. The navigator's pencil walks west on a damp chart. There is no parade in the sky, only threads. Each bomber is its own war. A heading, a time on target, a fuel line that must not sweat a single drop. Gun barrels in the tail are just painted broomsticks. The real defense is speed and profile. Low in, pop up to attack, low out. The Japanese coastline rises like a bruise out of haze. Crews climb through 1,500 feet for a clean run. Targets split. Tokyo, Yokosuka, Nagoya, Kobe, dockyards, refineries, aircraft works. Sirens spool. A few interceptors claw upward, late and scattered. Flak learns the angles as it fires. Bomb bay doors motor open. Greening's 20-cent sight flicks into place. No algebra, just a quick line, a steady hand, a release you can feel in your bones. The bombs step off like punctuation. Photographs would show little. Smoke, splinters, angry black flowers of flak. But the sentence is clear enough for anyone who can read a map. Japan is not out of reach. Noses swing southwest. Power back. Altitude back down. The land falls away into cloud and weather, and a long gray reach toward China. Radios stay mostly quiet. When a voice breaks the hush, it is clipped and human. Fuel good. Temps green. Course holding. Somewhere in the line, Ted Lawson's ruptured duck thumps through turbulence and keeps going. Somewhere else, a navigator rubs salt from his eyelids and recalculates ground speed against a wind that wasn't in the morning plan. In every cockpit, the same thought has weight. We launched from 650 nautical miles. The cushion is gone. Now, it's a race with night. There is no turning back to a deck. There never was. Only the thin arithmetic of airspeed and range, and the hope that fields in China are lit by luck, if not by lamps. The coast of Japan slips astern. The horizon ahead is empty and necessary. They did what physics, common sense, and tradition said could not be done. Launch 16 Army bombers from a carrier and strike the enemy's capital in month 4 of America's war. The physical damage was limited. Burned tanks, dented factories, punctured docks. The psychological damage was not. Japan shifted eyes and guns homeward. Invulnerable stopped being a safe word. In China, the blowback was terrible. Japanese reprisals in the Zhejiang Jiangxi campaign scorched towns that helped the flyers. Estimates vary widely. Tens of thousands to well over 100,000 civilians killed. The raid proved reach. The aftermath proved how war punishes kindness. We state the range because the numbers are contested. Truth deserves the whole frame. Back in the Pacific, the raid did not win a battle by itself, but it bent the calendar. It stiffened American morale, embarrassed Tokyo, and joined other pressures pushing the Imperial Navy toward a decisive move at Midway. Historians argue the weight of each factor. They agree on this. The Doolittle Raid moved minds. What remains, beyond courage, is a method. Inter-service cooperation that treated impossible as an engineering problem. Range bought with fuel and technique. Secrecy protected not by magic, but by choreography. A leader who worried about a filler cap with the same intensity he gave a map. If you listen closely to the takeoff footage, you can still hear it. Wind on metal, rain on glass, a human breath held long enough to become a fact. 16 shadows lifted off a wooden deck and wrote one clean line across an enemy's sky. You are not beyond our reach.